Have you ever been in a situation as an older sibling where you had a bad feeling your younger brother or sister was in trouble and needed your help? Kind of like getting spidey senses, but it was a feeling of, oh, they are definitely in some trouble right now, where you take off looking for them just to make sure they're okay? Well, I used to get that a lot, and there was this one time where that had happened, and it did for the better. You see, I have 2 younger brothers, and a lot of the time, they would go off and do their own thing, and that sometimes led to some pretty bad situations. So way back when I was around 15, and my younger brothers were about 11 and 7, we had gone up to our trailer park for the weekend to enjoy the nice weather and just be around the nature, which, by the way, is so needed when you're living in the city. Now, you see, back then, me and my brothers used to fight a lot, because we were young and we were never on the same page for a lot of things, and this often led to many verbal shouting matches. And I had remembered during this time in the summer, when we got to the trailer, and this had happened right off the bat. I can't remember what it was about, probably over not wanting to trade a certain Yu-Gi-Oh card he wanted or something like that, but as you would expect, it ended up turning into a yelling match, which we would then just go our separate ways and not see each other for the rest of the day. There was a park near the entrance of this trailer park, like a little play area or, had like the slides and stuff, and there was another down the street. So when these little arguments broke out, voice crack, we would usually just head to these parks separately and just avoid each other and hang out there to cool off. However, there was this one time where this had happened, and I suddenly began to feel a little uneasy for some reason. You see, the park my brother went to happened to attract a bit of a bad crowd in that area at times, which is more of a reason to avoid that place, and I didn't really feel good knowing him, an 11-year-old at the time, was down there in potentially harm's way. So I decided to push my differences aside and head down there to check up on him. As I had gone down, I'd seen my brother was with his friend and was talking to 2 other teens on their bikes, which as I approached closer could tell this wasn't a discussion, but a fight between them. I ran down to defend my brother against these 2 guys who were bigger than me as well, one a bit of a chubby guy and the other a skinny dude with his hat on backwards. These 2 really didn't seem like they had any reason to be fighting with my brother and his friend, but more or less were just looking for trouble. So naturally, I stood up for my brother and his friend and told these 2 to back off. And as you would imagine, this did nothing. However, as this argument began to get worse and worse, these 2 teens continued to argue and fight with me over calling out my brother and his friend for whatever reason. I began to realize that the chubbier one actually didn't really want any involvement or trouble with us, while the skinny guy with the hat seemed to be itching to start something. He would actually tell them to forget about us and head back on the road with their bikes. But that didn't stop this guy at all. He was getting some kind of enjoyment out of this, and he wasn't going to back down anytime soon. Suddenly, my brother shouted to him, "Don't mess with us or you're just going to get slapped around!" And this totally didn't help. This triggered the guy in the hat, to which he hopped on his bike, began to pedal towards my brother, and hit him, and also ran over him. When I saw this all take place, I had went into a rage. Literally, like the Hulk. I was like, "No!" And I went all green, and I raged, and I went over, and I shoved the guy off his bike, and I told them to get out of here before things got worse. A showdown began between me and him, standing our ground and staring into each other's eyes with a look so sinister it could tear into your very soul. My brother had been crying while this was all going on, as he was hurt, and I wanted to make sure these guys were gone so that I could go over and check up on him and bring him back home to my parents. So I told these 2 to both leave again. The guy in the ball cap was ready to come at me, but the chubby kid turned to his friend and said, "Come on, man, let's just go. This isn't worth it." The ball cap guy turned to his friend and said, "Yeah, whatever," and turned to me and said, "Keep yourselves in check, kids. You haven't seen the last of me." And they took off. I checked up on my brother after, and he was okay, but had a bit of a hurt leg. So I picked him up and piggybacked him back towards our trailer park, and his friend ended up taking off and going home. My brother ended up telling me after this all happened because they were just at the park and apparently they were on their turf, and they were just essentially being bullies to them. But my brother did also mention the guy with the baseball cap threatened them, so this could have gotten a lot worse. I remember this all so well because it was a moment where I had realized that even though we fight and have our differences, we're brothers till the end, and we had to look after each other. And that was a very important lesson to learn. It almost felt like the ending of a movie scene, carrying my hurt brother back home after defending him. It was a great feeling for me since, I'm the older brother and all. But either way, we came back home, my brother got looked at by my parents, and things for the rest of the weekend went great. We never did see those teens again after, and thank goodness for that.